I can already tell this is going to be kind of hard, but hi, welcome to the Rio Knits Knitting Podcast. This is my first time attempting a live stream, and I wanted to try this format out without hyping it up a whole lot because I don't know if I'm going to enjoy doing this or if it's going to be easier or more difficult than what I traditionally do, which is to record a video, edit it, and then upload it. That obviously takes a lot more time, but it gives me more control over how many times you have to hear me say or use other filler language. It also helps me keep the overall content sharp, on point, um, because I can ramble. It's very easy to think that you can sit down in front of a camera and say all the things that you have in your notes and that it will be easy, but it's not easy. So bear with me. This is my first time doing this, and I hope that the sound is okay. I hope that everything comes out the way I want it to. It's very hard to tell. Um, okay. Um, what's that do? Oh, I'm canceling that. Okay, sorry. I saw the edit button and thought I would play with that, but let's just forge ahead. So my name is Rhiannon. I'm a knitter living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with my wife and cat. I am um, checking in on all of the progress I've made on my knitting since my last episode, which was in, I think, mid to late July of this year. So it's, been about 6 weeks, and I have finished many things, and I have new things to share with you. A lot has also happened then, so I will be talking about a fiber crafty retreat thing that I went on, and then also I attended a fiber festival. So that's what the main, gist of this episode will be. Okay, so first things first, I will talk about finished objects. So the first finished object that I have to share is the Frederica socks, which is a pattern. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. It's a very interesting DK sock um, that has you start at the cuff and work this very interesting twisted rib and cable chart. So on the front of the sock, like on the shin, you have twisted rib, and on the back you have cables, which, because it's a DK weight superwash yarn, they really, really pop. You can see so much detail. And when they're, stretched out over a leg, of course, um, they still maintain that really sharp cable. And the reason that people might, a designer might choose twisted rib is that it also has like it pops out of the background more. So twisted rib is just when you do a knit through the back loop and then a purl stitch rather than a regular knit and a purl stitch. And it just makes that like, um, have more dimension. So it's a really fun textured sock. On the front, you kind of terminate the twisted rib in this point, and it kind of looks like you're wearing a pair of spats, which I thought was really funny and cute. Um, on the back, you're doing a heel in a way that I've never done it before, which is that you actually begin increasing from the center of that cable chart, and then you do a heel turn, and then your heel flap is actually on the bottom of the foot. So I would say like the standard vanilla sock with a heel flap and gusset, you're doing a heel flap, which is just a essentially square panel on the heel, and then you turn and then you decrease down on the bottom of the foot, and this is just the reverse of that. So you have a very pronounced heel. I guess what that does, what the difference that makes, is that if your sock is too long, rather than having a baggy toe, you'll have a baggy heel, so you just have to be more careful with getting that just right. But I actually was really proud of the fact that I did the first sock and it fit my right foot perfectly. And then I thought, okay, I'll add like 3 rows because my left foot's slightly bigger than my right foot. I don't know if you know this, but most people's feet are not exactly symmetrical. You might have like a millimeter of difference or maybe even 2 millimeters of difference in like the length of your feet. So it's just one of those things when you're knitting socks, it matters. When you're buying store bought socks, you'll never know the difference. But yeah, I did a pretty standard rounded toe, which was what was in the pattern. And I have two, hold them the same way. Oh, I have 2 socks now. So these were part of the Make It Challenge, which was something my local yarn shop did. Similar to in our childhoods, we would have the Book It Challenge. And if you read so many books, you would get a free pizza from Pizza Hut or Domino's or something like that. It was just a program that like schools and local libraries would do with, oh, my cats decided to use the litter box. That's lovely. So, anyways, you may hear that in the background, and I can't edit this out. So anyway, you may remember this program, and so my local yarn store, Cream City Yarn, decided to do a program where they would have a challenge that you knit 4 objects, and that had to be like a garment and something for your neck and something for your feet and something for your head. So, shawls, headbands, socks, leg warmers, really anything in that category. So this was my final project for that, which was the something for your feet. It's not the last one I started, but it's the last one I finished because I got a really bad case of second sock syndrome towards the halfway point of the second sock. I think there was something about like the novelty of making this sock um, carried me through about 1.3 socks. And then that last bit was such a slog. It was really a slog and I didn't enjoy it at all. And it has nothing to do with the pattern, I don't think. It's that for me, I've found that DK socks are not really any more enjoyable than fingering weight socks. And, I had heard that, oh, they go so fast and whatever. But knitting a DK weight yarn at such a tight gauge, it's very uncomfortable, I think. And um, I also have figured out through trial and error and making multiple pairs of socks with standard sock yarn, which is fingering weight. I figured out sort of what my desired stitch count is and like how, what size needle I like to use to get the gauge I want and, all of that stuff. And so doing these on a US size 2 needle with a DK weight superwash yarn was just kind of not as fun. And I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of superwash yarns in general. I feel like they're great for socks and sometimes for shawls, but I am more of a rustic wool, woolen spun gal. So that's, I guess, more my speed. I do appreciate superwash yarns for particular projects, but if I could be knitting on anything, I would like to be knitting something with like a woolen spun, fingering the sport 4-ply, probably British yarn. Like that's just like my favorite place to be. So, um, yeah, I got these done. I also completed um, a sweater that I had been working on. So this is the pattern Sweater Hug by Scandier Knits. I will hold it up and show you this. Let me unfold it. So as you can see, this is a all over one color sweater. I think honestly, I think this camera just has really poor quality, and I'm sort of questioning if live streaming is a good choice for this. But maybe I will at a later date get some photos or wear this on an episode or something when I'm recording and just like share it that way so that you can really see it. Because it's really beautiful. The yarn has a really it's got a lot of dimension to the color. It's a bit heathery. I guess heathery is the term that I would use. It's not like a tonal. It's definitely a solid color. But it has a heathery vibe because probably they blended different color fibers and then dyed those or something. Yeah, so it's a dark blue. This is Lore by the Fiber Company. This is like the third or fourth fiber company yarn that I've tried and used, and I really, really love it. I love pretty much everything they do. I've used the Canopy and the Cumbria, and I think the Road to China um, light, and I don't know if I've used any more. I feel like there's another one that I've tried out, but who knows? In my early days of knitting, I didn't keep good track of what I was using. I would just, buy something, knit something, give it away or whatever. So yeah, I want to show off kind of the beauty of this sweater, and just how I'm very proud of how like smooth this. It's not a seam, but I stitched the pickup on the back neck, and just like what a lovely jumper this is. So it is it's a full length sleeve. It has kind of a long ribbing on the cuff, the long cuff. It has an equally long neck ribbing. So when you're knitting it, you cast on, like, I think the back first, and then you do the front, and you do some neck shaping, and then you knit down. The pattern doesn't have you do any waist shaping. I did a tiny, tiny bit, and what I did was not really bring it in, but just bring it out so it's a little A-line. I feel like that's sort of the fit that I want. And I've talked about this before, but I do usually modify sweaters to fit my body, and the main considerations for me is that I'm fairly short. I'm larger on the bottom half than on the top half, so sort of below the waist, bigger than above the waist. My shoulders are not huge, or I mean, they're not as big as my hips would imply, I guess. So I'm usually doing like one size here and then finishing, as I go down in another size. That I do that a lot, and I get a nice fit that way. The other thing is that this sweater has a split hem, so rather than have one solid bottom, you have this nice kind of like a flap in front and a flap in back. And I know just from experience of sweaters that I've purchased in the past, or sweaters I've knit in the past, that when you have that split hem, if you have ribbing at the bottom, ribbing wants to pull in. And usually when you have a sweater where you've knit ribbing in the round on the bottom, it's fine because your body just sort of stretches it out. But I didn't want it to, the ribbing to pull in and then that little flap not hang straight, right? Where it kind of like cinches in a little, because then it just looks kind of weird. So I also increased so that I would have a little bit more of a straight line there. And when I blocked it, I paid attention to getting that bottom part to be pretty much as, I guess, A-line, straight, whatever as it could be. So I'm very excited to wear this sweater this winter. It's been on my to knit list for many years. I yeah, I think I fell in love with it the minute I saw on Ellie's podcast that she was designing it. I mean, really, it was just one of those, where I was like right away, like, yes, that looks like a dreamy sweater. It looks really comfy. It looks like something you would wear pretty much every day. It would become like a favorite. So, yeah, that's my second finished object. I just to recap the Make It challenge, I did the socks, I did the sweater. I'm also going to be teaching a class on how to knit this sweater starting in October at a local yarn shop. So if you're in Milwaukee, I think there might still be a couple seats available. So just thought I would throw that out there. It's at Cream City Yarn, and I'm going to be teaching folks how to knit this sweater. So it's a drop shoulder. If it's your first time doing a top-down drop shoulder, I think it's a great sweater to learn on. Even if it's your first sweater ever, honestly, there's nothing in it that's too difficult. And I think my favorite thing about this designer is that she assumes that you're smart and you can do things rather than sort of talking down to you, which I think designers kind of do. Um, but yeah, so okay, so that was the first two things for the make, or I guess the last two things for the make it challenge. The others, I'll just share again. I can't believe I haven't woven in the ends on this, but I did a pressed flowers hat. I really loved knitting this. I will probably do another one. I made a magic ball because I didn't like the way that the self striping, self color changing yarn that I had bought was working with this main color. I also knit the Cargill cowl. So again, I have like a little tail just poking out. I don't know what I was thinking, but this is just a really nice soft cowl that's like a mohair silk um, lace weight yarn held double with a fingering weight yarn. And in this case, the fingering weight is a silk merino blend. So it's very silky in addition to being very soft, and it's got a good amount of stretch. So it's not going to be tight on the neck. I will probably just block it slightly just to kind of keep it wide. I like a wide low cowl, I guess. But yeah, those are some of my finished objects. On to the next. Let me see. I have notes that I can consult as well. So, okay, the next thing I wanted to share is that I finally finished knitting, washing and blocking, but not weaving in ends on the Woodlands sweater. So this is a pattern by Tiff Nealon. I knit this for my spouse who saw it in Tolt Yarn in Tolt, Washington when we went there and said, that one, please. And so I've been meaning to make this for many years, and I finally bought the yarn last year and cast it on maybe January or February of this year, and then have just like put it on hold multiple times. So it's got this really cool, simple stripe motif, and then the bottom edge and the neckline is herringbone stitch, and then the sleeve cuff is a twisted rib. So it's got a really nice roomy cuff, but because it's twisted rib, it pulls in quite a bit and it doesn't look huge. Yeah, I actually had a lot of fun knitting this. It was my first time doing a Tiff Nealon pattern, and I really like her patterns, but they do have a lot of different techniques in them. And I think there's something really cool about her aesthetic that uses asymmetry in an interesting way. So when you are doing this top stripe up here, you're actually striping in garter stitch. So there's a little texture. And then you have this like half garter, half slip stitch motif. And then down at the bottom, you're doing that all, but you're just doing it in stockinette. So it doesn't look exactly the same. It looks like different things, which I feel like a lot of designers would just do, things very evenly or mirror image, and somehow this looks balanced without it being samey, same. And then you have these motifs just kind of reversed on the sleeve versus the body where the colors are swapped. And I think that's really cool. You don't have the same cuff as collar and hem. I mean, it's so neat how her mind works. So this is knit with the Retrosario Vovo, which I think is like a sport to DK weight yarn. It's pretty nice. I had a lot of trouble with it at first, gauge wise, and then I sort of relaxed into the rhythm of it. I think that when I'm switching between a lot of different projects, my gauge can change more than I want it to. And so this one, because it was a very round strand of yarn, I think I just really struggled with the gauge, even though there was nothing about it that should have been a struggle. It was, I think, a size 6 needle with like a sport to DK weight, which feels that should be easy, but it was feeling very tight at first, and I kept changing needles and I couldn't figure out, like I would change not the size of needle, but like from metal to wood and then well, what about this other brand of metal needle? And I don't know. I eventually got into it. So a funny thing happened, which is after I finished all of these projects that had been on the needles for a long time, I cast on another one, but I sort of cast it on thinking, I'm only going to cast on two projects at a time from now on. Like maybe I'll do like a shawl and a sweater, or like a shawl and a hat, or something, where it's I like the variety of stuff that like the Make It challenge forced me to think about my summer knitting in terms of I'm going to make one hat, one pair of socks, one garment, you know, something like basically pick, one thing from each category and make that my summer. So I like the idea of doing that and not ever knitting like two shawls or, two sweaters at the same time. But what ended up happening is I cast on a shawl and then I just did that start to finish. I didn't um I had a little blip at my fiber retreat, which I'll talk about, but I started fooling around with other yarn because I was kind of thinking about designing something. And then I knit a swatch for something else. But I didn't knit anything else. So I knit this shawl here completely, start to finish. And um, hi, I see somebody has joined. Hi, it's nice to see you. This is my very low stakes live stream because I've never done this before, and I can already tell I probably won't do it again because I'm not enjoying the way the green curtain looks purple and the lighting is bad and all that stuff. But anyways, hey ho, I'm here. I'm doing this. So this is my boneyard shawl. It's a very simple triangular shawl. I knit this with Hedgehog Fibers Tweedy in the natural color. Um, I have washed it and blocked it and not woven in the ends, which is the theme of today's episode. And I really just knit this, people say knitting monogamously, like you just work on one project at a time. And I almost started another project, and then I was like, why? I'm so close to being done with this. So I think the reason I got this one done in a relatively short span of time is that because it's stockinette, mostly, I was doing this during work meetings and, taking it to knit night and not having to like pay too close of attention to it. So it went faster than I thought it would, and I knit it in, I think I calculated about 28 days. So for for me to finish something in a month, start to finish, that isn't like just a little like pair of mittens or something, um, it's actually impressive because I usually have like 8 things going on at once, and this time I had just the one. So um, yeah, I'm done with this. I can't wait to wear it. It's amazing how with all the little tweed flecks, which of course you can't see very well on here. I mean, you can see that they're there, but you absolutely cannot see the real color of them. Um, it has a very pink tone to it, and when I blocked it, I mean, I washed it with wool wash to block it, and a lot of pink came out of it, which was surprising because the base color is kind of like a grayish natural undyed yarn. So anyway, um, if you're not familiar with this yarn, Hedgehog Tweedy is a yarn where they take, the scraps that are left over from other milling that they do at that mill, and then also people will sometimes send in their scraps. Just send your little ends of yarn that you have, and then they just basically chop them up and throw them in as tweed. So, from one skein to another, from one batch to another, it could vary quite a bit in terms of what colors are showing up. And I definitely feel like the first skein I used of this had a lot more pink, and then the second one had a lot more blue, which is fine by me. It just it was very interesting to watch that sort of color develop. um, I did not have the yardage to do the full size of this, so you're supposed to do like 13 of these you knit a section, you do a garter stitch stripe. It's a free pattern, so I'm not giving anything away. But you're supposed to do basically 13 sections, and I did 11 because it's already a pretty deep shawl. And then just use the rest of my yarn to um, like do a garter stitch border until I ran out. And I think it's perfectly fine. I think it will be a nice thing to wear in the winter. And just, I usually wear shawls more like a kerchief or a scarf anyway. So I think it's going to be, I think it's actually just the right size. If it was any bigger, it would be fine, but it doesn't have to be. Um, I don't know if I could have done it smaller, so I'm glad I got as far as I did because I was only like 100 yards short. Um, but the the triangle is so even that you don't have a very long end, and even though I aggressively blocked it this direction versus deep, it's like very deep, and the wings, so to speak, are not as long as mini shawls. Which was an interesting thing, like just like learning experience for me because I've done a lot of shawls where you start with a garter tab and basically you cast on a number of stitches and then you knit back and forth for a while until you have this little rectangle, and then you turn it sideways and you pick up along that edge, and usually you're picking up, say you've cast on 3 and you've knit 10 rows of 3, then you go along and you pick up like 6 stitches or something, and then turn it again at a 90-degree angle and pick up 3 more. So you have, 2 short sides that are like 3 stitches and a long side that's like 6 stitches on your little rectangle. And then you knit out from there so that it ends up becoming like a triangle. This one, you're really just doing 3, 3, and 3. So the depth ends up being as long as the width of each side, if that makes sense. I think if you've knit a shawl from a garter tab, you know exactly what I mean. And if you haven't, this is probably gibberish, but there you have it. I finished that project. Let's see. Take a drink. I'm sorry to anyone who hates people drinking on videos. When you talk a lot, you have to sip water. So one more finished object, which I don't have here because it's on my bed, is I finally finished a quilt that I've been working on since 2019. It's a log cabin quilt on one side, and because I think that piecing fabric together is like the most fun part of making a quilt, I went ahead and did like a random big block backing. So the back is also like a pieced, like a patchwork. Hi, I just noticed people are here. I'm looking at a webcam this way, and then at the screen here. This is a very unsophisticated first attempt at live streaming, but it's nice to see that people are here and watching, and that I'm making your workday less boring. That's great. So yeah, I think I was talking about I finished a quilt. I hand quilted and then hand stitched the binding down on the second side. So basically took the binding and sewed it on with a machine on one side, and then, folded it over and hand stitched that part down. It was a lot of fun, and I've already started working on another quilt. So I think I will just talk about, well, first let's talk about some other things that I consider to be finished objects, but that no longer exist. So the first one, and I say it's finished because I'm finished with it. I was knitting a pair of socks with this yarn, and I decided to just frog them. This is the Farmer's Daughter Sock Squad January colorway, which is very pretty. It's you can't see it really at all, but it's kind of a lavender with hints of blue, and then it has speckles of a deep kind of berry maroon kind of color. So I just wasn't inspired by the socks I was knitting, and I was like, I have no desire to make these or finish these or even have them, so forget it. So I frogged it, and that was a great That really relieved my mind. I also was knitting a moonset tee and just had no desire again to finish it. I had done all but one sleeve of this tee, and I was just looking at it like I'm not going to enjoy wearing this. I don't even want this thing at all. And gave it to a friend who I think took the one sleeve I had done off and turned it into a vest. So I think she's going to have fun trying to dye it or just play around with what it could become. Um, but it's kind of nice to just be done with things, even and not have to like finish knitting them and then have an FO that you don't want. So um, okay, I will talk about the I guess I will talk about my next knitting project because it's my only work in progress right now. So I'm continuing on this monogamous knitting kick. I see people who knit a thing start to finish and they just have a finished object so much faster. And I've always sort of mentally wanted to be there, but not emotionally been there, if that makes sense. But right now, I seem to emotionally be like, I have the bandwidth for one thing at a time. So I am knitting a vest. It's a Fair Isle vest. It's called the Academic, and it's by Scandier Knit. So um, if you sense a theme emerging, you are correct. I really love Scandier Knit's patterns. I think her patterns are fantastic. I really enjoy her aesthetic and the stuff she designs, and I like the way she writes her patterns as well. So this is a sweater vest that is knit from the bottom up. It's all over color work, which I've never done anything that was color work all over. I've done things where like the yoke is color work or a little piece of it is, but this is all over stranded color work. So um, I have made only one modification, which is that I shortened the ribbing at the bottom. The pattern calls for 4 inches of ribbing, but when I was looking at the projects that people have done of this, I felt like it looks really good where the main color was dark because it sort of underlined it, so to speak. But where the main color was light, it just kind of looked like you had this like patterned fabric and then this like just swatch of plain fabric that didn't really make sense. So I only did 2 inches of ribbing instead of 4, and I think that is just fine. So I have also um, chosen my own colors. I didn't stick to the color palette that was in the original design. That's not something I really ever do or ever have felt obligated to do. I've pretty much since day one of being a knitter have been of the mind that you choose the pattern and then you choose whatever yarn you want to use with it based on your preferences of color and um, you know your budget or what's available locally or whatever. So I like to buy things locally as much as possible. And for somebody who's designing in the UK, their options might be different than mine. And I don't really find it exciting to order yarn online. I know that results in like happy mail days, but it's not the same for me as like going into a store and buying it. Luckily, I had 3 of these yarns already. I had one skein of each of 3 colors of Ralma's phenol or PT2. So I had bought a hat kit that used those 3 colors, and I was, as time went on, was like, I think I was drawn to the color palette, not the hat. So I just needed to get the rest of the yarn. And when I was at the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival, I managed to get the rest of the yarn. So I will show you the colors that I've done, that I've chosen. So the main color is just a natural undyed. It does lean a little gray because of the type of sheep, I think, the type of wool it is. So this is, I think, a Norwegian brand, PT2, Rauma. Alrighty. So then I have a gray, I have a light blue, I have a navy, and I have a rust, like a deep rust orange. So that's my color palette there. That felt dangerous. My fingers are not long enough to prevent those from rolling in every direction if they fall. And I've just been working on this for 6 days, and I already have this much because I haven't been working on every other project that's in my brain. Um, it's going to be a beast to weave in the ends, not going to lie, because I've already started like braiding some of them on the inside. It's horrible. You're changing colors a lot. Um, and there are some lines where you're changing not one, but two colors, or some rows. But at the same time, I think it's such a pretty pattern and it looks so good in all the color palettes that people have used that I don't care. It's worth it. And I have a lot of things that I need to weave in the ends on. So I'm probably gonna have a session where I just put on a podcast and like weave in a bunch of ends. Um, yeah, so I think I have about 8 inches of fabric so far. I need it to be 12 to start doing the armhole shaping. And so I think I'm really like more than a quarter done with this in less than a week. I have there has also been a weekend, so I've been working on this a lot, and I've been carrying it everywhere. When I ride the bus to work, I take it with me in this really great basket bag that one of my friends gave me for my birthday. So this was a gift from my friend Stephanie, and it is absolutely perfect. I mean, it sits upright. You can have like balls of yarn rolling around in there, and it's big enough that they're not like touching and like unraveling the ball of yarn next to it or whatever. So yeah, I've been just carrying that everywhere and working on that. All right, what else do I want to say about that? Um, yeah, I think I was going to share a little bit about just like my plans for the fall and some things that I've purchased and what I've been up to. So the main thing is that this fall I have chosen to do, again, similar to the Make It Challenge. I've tried to pick patterns from different categories, and I ended up picking two vests, but those are both, but they're pretty different from each other. And one's a pullover and one's a button up. So I feel like it's kind of like if you did a sweater and a cardigan, they're different, right? And I've never knit a vest, so this will be my first time making a vest. I've never knit a skirt either, so I'm going to be knitting the Academic, which is a pullover sweater vest all over Fair Isle. I'm also going to be knitting the Hobbiton vest, which is a button-up um, vest that has almost more of a tank top, like scooped out arms side kind of vibe to it. And it is knit with a fingering weight and a mohair held together. Um, I picked up these yarns at the Sheep and Wool Festival for that, so I will share about them. I don't know. The light is kind of cooperating right now, but mm, I don't know. This reads a lot more yellow in person. It's got a lot of yellowy greens, like I mean, they both do. This one you can kind of see is more yellow. So anyways, this is from Utopia. It's their silk and mohair. So it's 72% super fine kid mohair and 28% silk. So it's a little more mohair than your average blend. I think the average blend is like a 60-40 or something. But yeah, I just thought it was so pretty. And it had all these beautiful strands of like goldish green in it that were really foresty. This vest, the color of it really just reminds me of the Shire and like just like Hobbit stuff. And so I found two yarns at two separate booths that I thought would work. So this one is called Lux Flock Sock. It's by Bumblebee Acres Fiber Farm, and it is 80% non-superwash Cormo wool and 20% silk. So it doesn't have a ton of sheen the way you think of like a silk wool blend does, but it almost like glows softly. I'm really hoping that I'm not making a mistake putting these together because sometimes I think when you have a very pretty shiny yarn and then a very pretty fuzzy mohair and you put them together, what they end up doing is just blurring each other and then the qualities of each are lost. So I hope that doesn't happen. Um, anyway, we'll find out, right? The colorway on this is jade. I don't think this color screams jade to me. Like when I think of jade, I think of maybe like a cooler, lighter green, but it definitely has that like foresty vibe that I like. So these are going to go together and be a Hobbiton vest. Um, yeah, and then kind of sticking with that green theme, I guess, I'm going to be making a pattern that has also been in my queue for a while. It's the De Lovely skirt by Squidney Knits. This is a real departure for me because one, I've never knit a skirt, but also it has a very distinctive like period costume vibe to it that um, I tend to wear things that are sort of like classic and timeless, and this one definitely has like a 1940s look to it. And I'm going with a color that to me is very like 1940s military inspired kind of, you know, shade of green that's kind of olivey. But I think it will work as a classic piece as well. So this skirt is just a really cute skirt that has like a little belt that you can put over a top that you wear with it, or you can just put it right on the skirt. And I just like, I loved it from the get go. I also am a Patreon supporter of Squidney because that's how you get access to like one pattern a month if you do that. So at this point, I have access to many of her patterns. But what's really cool about the way she writes her patterns is that she gives you a formula. She gives you a gauge and then she gives you a formula and she's like, okay, you are going to take these measurements on your body, right? So it's not like, here's my 10 set sizes. It's like very advanced in terms of size inclusivity. You're going to actually measure yourself in all these different places and then you're going to plug that in. And here's the formula to calculate how many stitches you need, which is to say basically she's making it very easy for the end user to do a very custom fitted piece. You know, if you're not confident doing math, it sort of gives you that formula that you're looking for in a pattern where it's like I just have to get the gauge and then this will work out. But it's also not like based on the assumption that if your waist is this size, then your hips are this size and you're this tall, right? Like it's sort of like, well, how tall are you and what what are these different measurements on your particular body? um, so I think that's going to be a real adventure to try to knit something that way instead of just taking a pattern for what it is and saying, okay, I'm size 5 and then making my adjustments that I was going to do anyway, because I'm always modifying things to fit me better. It's already built in, so I'm excited for that. So yeah, this is Juniper Moon Farms Patagonia. After I went to the Sheep and Wool Festival with my friend Erin, who I think is watching, or I don't know, maybe working, maybe both. Um, she took me to a yarn shop called Needles and Pins, which is very near where she's from, her hometown. And I loved that shop. I ended up buying like way more yarn there than I thought I would. But one of the things I got was the quantity for this skirt. I have been looking for a local stockist of Patagonia for a while. Again, I know I can easily order this online from like 10 different retailers. But for me, I want to go into a local yarn store. I want to hold the two colors up next to each other and see it with my naked eye and go, which one do I want? I also want to, compare it to other things in the store that are similar, all of that stuff. And it was really nice to go there and get this because I had been looking at doing the skirt for a long time and I wanted to use the recommended yarn just because I didn't want to like introduce any more complexity into the pattern due to the things I've explained of how it's written. Um, but everywhere that I've seen Juniper Moon Farm before, I'm I guess I haven't seen so many colors of it in one place before. And so it was really nice to be able to compare the colors and then pick the one. And this is actually a color that I've liked for a really long time. Back when I lived in Portland, I very nearly bought a sweater quantity of this for the cozy classic raglan that I ended up making out of like the gray color instead. But I came really close to getting this color before. So I'm really happy to have it. And I think it will be a really good um, color neutral, if that makes sense. Like I feel like you need you need neutrals that are colors in winter. That's my belief. Like black, white, and gray are not the most attractive when everything outside is black, white, and gray. So I like to go with like navy and olive and browns and maroons and things that kind of read neutral-ish when everything's gray outside. So yay! I got I think 5 skeins of this. I think it will be enough. If my skirt comes out a little shorter, that's okay because one, I'm short, and two, it'll be worn with like leggings in winter. I'm not going to be trying to wear a wool skirt in summer, so I'm not worried about it. Um, Alrighty. Um, so let me just tell you about a couple other things that I got from the Sheep and Wool Festival because I had a really good time and I found so many treasures. I just like yeah, I want to share because I hadn't heard of some of these things or I didn't know. I also did end up taking somebody to the airport in Chicago, like about a week before the Sheep and Wool. So I went to a local yarn shop there and I purchased um, 2 things there. So the first one I'll show you is this really cute little cork um, notions pouch. I added the pom pom onto it because I wanted to, but it's like it zips like the zipper just goes down one side instead of instead of just the top or instead of all the way around. So it's kind of nice because I can unzip just the top part and then sort of pour out, my measuring tape or whatever I'm looking for. And I really enjoy it. It's really, I don't know, it's just got like a nice, cool vibe to it. I also bought this skein of mohair because apparently I'm like collecting mohairs that are cool now. Um, but it's from Dye Mad Yarns, and they did a series in Chicago based on the different libraries there. So this was very limited edition, and it was the last one of its kind. So this is based off of the Harold Washington Library, and it has these amazing colors that are kind of like pop rocks or Smarties or like some kind of candy, that's got all the different colors. Some of the yellow is very like butter yellow. Um, some of it's like much more gold. Um, the the sort of aqua color goes from very very blue to very green. It's got this pink in it that goes very red at some points. It's just I thought it was really cool and I thought it would look really good like held double with like a solid white yarn. So I don't know what it's going to end up in, but it will end up in something. Um, okay, another thing I got at the Sheep and Wool Festival was this Shirsty Cat Designs BFL sock. This is a yarn company I had never heard of, but this is a color that I seem to be collecting things of. I had dyed a skein of yarn basically this color, but I have a much less sophisticated ability to dye yarn, so mine isn't as nice looking, I guess, or I guess the color gradations are very subtle because it's more of like a watercolor effect. And this one has, you can actually see like sharp contrast in colors. But this was the colorway glass slipper, and it totally has like a beautiful like Cinderella blues and purples vibe. So I don't know. This was the first thing I saw and that I felt like I had to have, and I was like, I don't even know why I'm being this way, but like I don't know. There's something about going to fiber events with other knitters that I think brings out the covetous little raven in me that um, I don't feel defensive about just wanting it and getting it, you know? Um, Another thing I got was this yarn from Mitchell Wool. This was also like a new to me brand. And the Tunis DK is a heritage breed wool. So the Tunis sheep, I guess, is a very endangered sheep. So I bought one 50-gram skein because the price on this was kind of high. I understand why it's high. They're trying to they're literally saying shave them to save them. They're trying to prevent this breed of sheep from becoming extinct, and so it is $30 for 50 grams. That is not what I would call a budget friendly yarn. When you think about, if you were to do a sweater quantity DK weight, you're looking at, I don't know, a lot of money. But for like a pair of mittens or something, I thought, one skein that's perfectly good. And then I can try it and then, be part of the overall like group of people that are buying this yarn and hopefully saving this breed of sheep. So the colorway is Winter Pond, and it's just a really nice tonal that's a very icy green blue. I purchased this Leading Men Fiber Arts 50-gram skein in a similar vein. It's, I was really drawn to kind of icy colors, I think, while I was at the festival, despite really being there for the vests that I'm making. But I thought this color was just really beautiful. And I liked that they had 50-gram skeins because I think sometimes speaking for myself, I want to collect fingering weight yarns as like, this will go in a shawl someday or whatever, but I don't really have a purpose for it. So it's nice to be able to get a little bit less of it, just because chances are I'm not going to need the whole skein anyway, like a whole 100-gram skein. And this is 231 yards. So this is really a decent amount of this. And it's the colorway Poseidon, who is probably like, if I was going to believe in any Greek god, it would be Poseidon because oceans are scary. But I just think it's really beautiful. It's a nice kind of seafoam green with some darker colors in it. This to me is more of a jade color. It's what I think of jade. And then it has these very, very fine blue speckles that I wish you could see up close, but they're just very, very fine. They're like smaller than grains of sugar. I mean, beautiful. The last acquisition I'm going to talk about was also from when I went to Needles and Pins. I got a bunch of this yarn, which is Nuble by Araucania. I guess they're discontinuing this yarn, which is really sad. It's a very nice light fingering wool silk single ply blend. And I knit the aperture lace shawl out of this yarn, not in this color, but I really love the way it feels as a knitted object to put around your neck. I don't wear that shawl a lot because it's very, very asymmetrical, and I struggle with wearing extremely asymmetrical shawls, but I do really like the yarn. And so I got a skein in this color that I thought, could mix with one of the other things I got, or not, whatever. I got 3 of this color because I thought this would be just like a great shell scarf something together. It is definitely not showing up the color that it is, but it's a fuchsia color. So the color is called fuchsia, and that's what it really is. It's definitely got like a pink purple vibe to it. And then I got 4 skeins, where 2 are black, 1 is white, and 1 is this kind of like oatmeal-y color, to make a scarf or shawl out of. I have a ready-to-wear scarf that I've been wearing for many years, and it's just getting a little old, and I want to try to replicate that pattern, the pattern that it's in. So it's a woven one, but I think I can do like mosaic or something to make it look the same. So yeah, I got those. I bought some other bits and bobs, but not really anything that I need to share. I will share that when I was at that yarn store in Chicago, I bought one of these Mindful Collection cords from Knitter's Pride because I have a set of the Lika DPNs, Lika interchangeable needles, and I really hate the cord on those. I love the needle tips, but I hate the cord. So I'm going to try it out with some Knitter's Pride cords and just see how that goes, because I would love to only have to buy some cords rather than get rid of and then replace this set of wooden interchangeable needles. So yeah, in case you were in the same boat where you had bought those interchangeable needles and don't like the cord, I would say the Knitter's Pride. I mean, it fits the same, and it's a thinner, lighter, more bendy cord. Okay, what else do I have to share? I will show you the swatch that I knit. So the Gel Tunic has been on my to knit list forever. I have the yard here. It's the Harrisville Daylights. And I actually knit a swatch. Unbelievable. But when I was on a fiber retreat with my friends, I just went ahead and knitted a swatch. A good size, full size swatch. So I use the recommended needle size, and I think my gauge is a little too loose. So I think I'm going to go down a needle size, which would put me at using a size 6. But I'm also going to kind of let this swatch sit around and hang out for a while and then measure it again, because I think that sometimes right after blocking, it's, the minute it dries, it might not be exactly what its forever measurement will be. And I knit the Rook sweater with Harrisville's Nightshades, which is the black version of Daylights, basically. And that thing grows as I'm wearing it. There's something strange, but I put it on at the beginning of the day and it fits great. And by the end of the day, it's like much bigger. So I want to make sure that this isn't going to become the wrong size, because I think this dress could end up looking not great if it's like really baggy. I don't know. But the final thing I wanted to share was just that I started another quilt at this fiber retreat. So I keep talking about this fiber retreat. It's not like a scheduled hosted thing. To the extent it was hosted by my friend Holly, whose in-laws own a cabin, and she just said, hey, I like to quilt, you like to sew, you like to knit, do you guys all want to get together and go up to the cabin and, hang out and spend a few days just crafting? And so I was like, absolutely. And so I did that, and I went there, and we had tables out with like ironing, irons and ironing mats and sewing machines, just like sitting out all day. And so you could kind of sit down, work at your machine for a couple hours, and then go do something else. We all took turns doing meals. It was just so much fun, and I got a lot done. I learned how to crochet a granny square, which I'm not good at, but now I know, and I will just keep practicing. I also got started on my next queen size quilt project, so I'm going to share that with you. And that will be the last thing I share, because I have talked for a long time. And I don't think I'm gonna love the finished result of this video just because the colors are not showing up right. I feel like the sound probably isn't very good. Um, yeah. But anyways, I am making a Battenberg quilt, which is just basically you do white and then colors alternating. I am loosely interpreting that to include things that have a white background and colorful um, foreground. So I have made 27 of these 9 patch blocks, and I need, I think, 28 more. Um, it's pretty amazing when you start with these blocks and you start sewing them together, and then you're taking a 1/4 inch off of each side. I'm giving myself a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so you're taking so much off of each side that they just get like smaller and smaller. And you can see like the one in the middle is actually like quite small. It's probably 3 inches by 3 inches. So they start out like closer to 4 by 4 and then end up like 3 1/4 or 3.5 by 3.5. Yeah, it's just a lot of these blocks, and I just have to keep doing more. So thought I would just share those. That's what I did for the fiber retreat, and I had a grand old time. So um, yeah, without further ado, I think I will just wrap it up and just say, you can connect with me on Instagram. I'm Rio Knits on Instagram. I'm also on the Making app, also Rio Knits there. And I am also on Ravelry, although I don't really socialize over there, but I try to post my projects. And I'm in the middle of updating um, my stash, which is to say, actually like documenting it and then, taking out things that were in there 5 years ago and have since been used. So it's not the most up to date, but it's, I'm there. So, all right. It's been great doing this experiment. I hope to have a functional video and I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye.